Welcome to episode 196 of The Numbers Game. I'm Jace. I'm here with Nick and Marty. How are we going today, fellas?
Going well, thanks, Jace. Microsoft trying to shut down the world. Ex-presidents getting shot at. Challenges out there. But hey, mate, I'm battling through. No one's shooting at me, at least no one that I know of yet. But feeling good. Nick, how are you, my friend?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. And isn't it good that we've come to today's episode without any of those topics to discuss? You know, we're going against the grain. I'm sick of hearing about Trump. You're no doubt sick of hearing about things that you can't access on your phone because what was the business that went down? I've forgotten its name.
CrowdStrike. Yep.
So we're bringing the real impactful things to people. No one cares about that stuff. We're talking about the good stuff. Yeah.
No, they're down 14% anyway.
Jace, how are you, mate?
Mate, I'm good. It's always love coming into a recording hot off the weekend. So it was a good one on Sunday. The blue skies and sunshine was out at time of recording for this run. Melbourne was on yesterday. So yeah, I think there was like 26,000 people got out and about in Melbourne and went for a trot, through the city, down the Docklands, around the Botanical Gardens. So plenty of good vibes around. That's what we like.
Good. How'd you go?
Good. Yeah. Happy. Greg was the 145 pacer. He's really progressed in his running career to now where he's getting the call up to be, the guys that run with the balloons tied to their backs and then everybody follows them to try and get a time. Greg was the 1 hour 45 pacer. So I got to watch him run along with a balloon tied above his head. So yeah, he nailed it. He ran 144 and 57 seconds. So for anyone who tried to run with him, they would have been bang on happy with their time. So that's what we're about here. Numbers. It's all happening. And I'm glad you didn't mention anything about the Bombers. So that's worked out well for Marty and I.
Look, as an Adelaide Crows supporter, you can't really be gloating about a 2-point win.
But you are.
I know you boys are suffering, and I'm not interested in doubling down on that, to be honest. So happy to move on and wish you all the best for the rest of the year.
Well, thank you, mate. Thank you. Well, in focusing on the good things in life, it's providing value to the lovely Numbers Game audience. And for any Bombers fans out there, we feel your pain. But Nick, what have you brought to the table for us today? What are we giving out?
I just want to talk about retirement, really, and the way that Aussie property contributes to retirement and the way that retirees are actually thinking about their property when it comes to retirement. The reality is for us as financial planners, when most mum and dads come into us and start to set up a retirement plan or are already retired, the family home contributes to that retirement plan in a big way. And I think people should be thinking about it earlier than what they do. You think about your family home as a roof over your head. You think about your family home as somewhere where you make memories and you raise your kids. But at some stage, you move out of that home just because kids move away. If you've got a big house that becomes too big to maintain, it might have a second floor and you don't feel like going upstairs anymore. Or you simply might be, moving to another state. So your home lays foundations for what retirement looks like. And I think the earlier we can think about that, the better. And I think in our country, there's so many people that are asset rich and cash poor, which is actually a really good thing because we're asset rich because we've been very fortunate to own property in this great country of ours that just keeps going up and up and up. But at the same time, you need an income when it comes to retirement and you lose your ability to earn. And your property can go a long way towards making sure you've got a relevant or an appropriate income in retirement. So, we're encouraging people to think about it more and more in their younger years. And, the elephant in the room at the moment, as far as property goes, is land tax. So the age-old strategy of buy an investment property, negative gear, build your portfolio that way. Whilst it is an awesome strategy and people should definitely consider it, it's very hard to cash flow properties these days. You haven't just got land tax. You've got the increase in landlord's insurance. You've got body corporates increasing. Interest rates is the obvious one, which we think will go down, but to no degree where they were. Holding investment properties is now a real concern for a lot of people. And then second to that, when you sell that property, you've got capital gains that you've got to deal with because properties in this country continue to go up. So the argument is, well, do you take all that money and just pour it into a bigger family home? You get a better asset for your family because you're putting all that cash flow into funding a repayment. And then when you sell that property, it's tax free. And this is the thing, at some stage, you are going to sell that property. It is absolutely 99% of the time people are selling their family home. So the challenge is, do you put more money into investment properties or do you just buy a bigger house? You've still got the same amount of money invested. So this is what I want to talk about today. And the reason I wanted to talk about it is I just saw something online in an article that suggested that retirees in Australia are sitting on $1.3 trillion of equity in their owner-occupied homes. Now, if they were to access just 20% of that equity in some way, we would add $260 billion in cash to people's retirements. So I think the age-old theory of, just hold the asset, I don't want to touch my home, I don't want to go into debt. But at what stage in life do you get to the point where you say, okay, well, I've only got 20 years to live or 30 years to live. I know I need to think about this house as an asset and an investment that can fund my retirement or fund what I want to do in life. So thought it'd be good to talk about that. Over to you boys. Thoughts?
Yeah, great topic, Nick. It's I'm closer to death than you guys, I'm pretty sure, being at 52 and things that I have to consider. But I think I brought this up the other week, just in passing, just a conversation we had, Nick, in regards to, I was basically thinking in my own head, what's the point of having something that's, you got capital gains tax on the back end, you've got land tax, the cost of holding is a lot more expensive, when you could strategically get that home at a level where you're not going to have capital gains, and then have a strategy of building a business where you can generate cash flows and pumping it into superannuation as well that's tax effective as well. So it's almost this triangle approach. And again, it's funny because just because as a nation we might have done something one particular way for one time doesn't mean we can't change it up depending on circumstances that are presented as well. This is where we talk about always getting professional support around that, an accountant, financial planner, finance broker, legal. It's really important to go, all right, well, where is my money going to best work for me in the future? And that might have changed from what it was 10, 15 years ago to what it is now. And it's all the things we know. It's just, how do we bunch it up more effectively? So I love that you've brought this up. Jace, anything that to add on that?
Well, yeah, definitely. I think, we've talked about retirees, and the thing that I think I often see with the people that we work with between Future Advisory and Innovate, the work that we get to do with our clients, we're having conversations with, younger Australians more and more, in a sense. So we're starting to have these conversations earlier, and when we're telling them, hey, would you like an introduction to the lovely team at Innovate? They can have a look at your situation, review your super fund, have a look. And they're going, well, I'm not going to be able to touch that money for 20, 30, 40 years. What's the point? And there's a bit of this attitude or this idea that you need to be approaching retirement age before you start to think about what to do with your super or what to do with the family home. I think it's a great topic to bring up, Nick, because not only are we going to change the mindset that let's not wait until it's nearly retirement time, let's start to have these conversations sooner so that we can make huge impact on what retirement looks like for us by making smarter decisions, by, as Marty said, working with professionals.
Yeah, and just having an understanding of how the home fits into the financial plan. And we've heard numerous times that your home is the worst asset. But you generally hear that from people overseas and, particularly Americans, because you think about your home, you have an exorbitant repayment on that house and it returns no income. But the reality is in this country, we are homeowners. The great Australian dream, that's what we want. We park the fact that we could maybe get a better return somewhere else if we really wanted to, and we're happy to rent. That just doesn't happen in this country, and that's just the reality of it. So when we're putting so much money into an asset, and that's what it is. It's an asset. It's not a home. It's actually an asset. We need to understand how that is going to help us retire. Because as I said at the start, what I can guarantee you is you will sell it and it will provide you a lump sum of money because you will generally downsize and go into something that's smaller. So I like to encourage people to think about, when they're thinking about their retirement and building wealth, if they're not someone out there who wants to make a heap of investments, there's three things you should be thinking about. Number one is your superannuation, of course. It's a really good tax environment or a tax vehicle, tax saving vehicle to invest. Number two, you might have some investments outside of that. So you might still have an investment property, or you might have a share portfolio, or it might even be a business that you're building that's holding value that you can realize at some stage. And number three, think about your family home, because if you're sitting on a $4 million asset, and it's not crazy to think about something being worth 4 mil, most homes now, if you want to buy a home in a really good area in Melbourne, a family home, you're paying 1.5 plus. Fast forward 20, 30 years, it's going to be a $4 million asset. You can probably sell that for $4 million, downsize going to something at 2.5 million, and you got $1.5 million in equity that you can then use to fund retirement, whether that goes into super or some other income producing vehicle. So we're just saying, understand your home and how it's actually going to contribute to your financial plan, and don't consider it as just a home, consider it as an investment and an asset, because we do pour so much money into it. So the things to consider, this is an example, is maybe stretch yourself. What are the good areas that you can move to? Like when you are buying a house, really think about it as a financial asset. Well, okay, is there a better option if I go an extra 100 grand? I didn't really want to, but if I go an extra 100, 200, what's that going to mean in 20 years' time? Because it's actually probably going to impact the prosperity of your retirement. So it's thinking, again, outside the family home and thinking about that vehicle as an investment.
Yeah, love that. Where are you going to keep more of your money? Where are you going to keep more of your money? That's what you got to think about. And again, and someone once told me, it was good advice. They're saying we generally, as investors and business owners, tend to think about revenues coming off the assets we buy. But if you look at it as a more holistic picture, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be generating income off that mortgage or off that home initially. It could be you have a business. It could be you have other avenues to generate, cash flow in order looking at the bigger picture. And what you just got to work out is, how much more are you going to keep by putting that into the home and putting it into super. And you've got to look at that holistic approach in regards to, keeping the most of your effort that you're putting in building whatever wealth you're looking to build. So I love this topic because it shifts the perspective of being siloed in your thinking and opens it up to look at it as a whole game. And how can you win that game? Tax effectively, legally. But I think, there's a lot of consultants too working from home at the moment, just out of a home office. So I'm interested with Jace, if you are earning money as a consultant from the home, are there any compromises to the capital gain, no capital gain on your home?
Yeah, look, it's a great question, Marty, and one that the ATO, like to be all over as much as possible. Got to be careful when it is your main residence. So if you do have the PPR, so primary place of residence, which is a main residence exemption, if you're trying to apply that to where you live, you got to be careful about how you work from home. So the working from home and only claiming the set rate method or the hourly rate method for your home office generally will keep your home tax exempt. If you then decide, well, no, I work from home flat out, so I'm going to claim, the room that I work in plus a little bit of extra space makes up, call it 20% of my home, and it's dedicated work use. If you then claim 20% of your mortgage, 20% of your insurance, 20% of your other running costs, if you work it all out, when you sell your home at some point down the track, if you've been claiming all those expenses on your tax return to genuinely run an office from where you live, the ATO is going to want their slice on the other side too. So if you were claiming 20% of the total cost of your home over that period, they're going to want 20% of the capital gain that you make when you sell your home. So you do have to be really careful how you claim your house expenses on your tax return if you are working from home. There are some cases where you can't get away with it at all. So let's say you were running a childcare business out of your garage even if you chose not to claim the expenses on your tax return, the ATO would turn around and say, well, no, your home has been used as an income producing asset. It is now up for capital gains tax because you've been producing income from that home. So yeah, heaps of minefields around that entire space. But, when we talk to clients, ultimately what we try and say is keep your main residence separate from tax. You want that to be a tax exempt asset so that one day when you sell it and you make a gain, that is your right basically as an Australian under the main residence exemption, that all the profit you make on the home that you've lived in is tax-free. You don't want to jeopardize that by, unless it's just genuine stuff where you need to help cash flow your life. So you might be Airbnb-ing a room. Cool. That's fine. Some people need to do an Airbnb to keep the cash flow coming in, help with the mortgage repayments, help with cost of living. All comes down to documentation. You just got to keep good documentation on what you're doing, when you're doing it, and a timeline and the intention. As I said, because sometimes we get years down the track and the ATO's got the data. The ATO will know if you were putting the property on your tax return and declaring income. Don't think that 5 or 10 years down the track when you sell, that the ATO is just going to forget about it. Eventually they'll send you a letter or they'll come knocking and they'll want their slice of that for sure.
Great to know the subtleties. Really
So,
great.
Just a real simple tax question. If you're doing Airbnb, which I think a lot of people would be at the moment because of the stress on household budgets and whatnot, people are looking at other ways to generate revenue. Does that expose you to capital gains or no?
Yep,
it does.
So basically, you're using your home as an income producing asset. So there's a tax implication. So basically, anytime you can tie a tax implication to it, that's when it's likely the ATO are going to say that you have to pay capital gains tax. So again, what you try and do is pro rata the percentage of space that was made available, the amount of time it was made available, and they're actually quite complicated calculations in the long run. But it all comes down to personal circumstances at the time. We had a client that for years was Airbnb-ing her property, and the gains were so minimal, and then the calculation to pay us to kind of work out the calculation on the CGT, like it ended up not really being worthwhile by the time you then factored in capital gains tax. Bit of a minefield, as I said. So, something to always talk to your tax advisor about. If you have an accountant and it's not future advisory and you're thinking about doing something like that, always recommend talking to professionals up front first because, it's all too often we get people that come to us years down the track that they've been doing it and didn't understand the tax implications up front.
Yeah, it's not till you hurt.
Yeah, that's right. And just going back to the family home, and this is one for you, Marty. I'd ask you if you're seeing this, but when I was thinking about this, I was like, well, how else can the family home help people get ahead? And I think the other thing we're seeing a lot of is guarantor loans, and we're seeing there's this big generational transfer of wealth at the moment, and you've got not so much the baby boomer population, but the builders, the population before them that have become wealthy off property. And we're seeing a transfer of wealth, not even so much to the baby boomers from the builders to the baby boomers, because the baby boomers, they've made money because they're also in property, but it's that next generation, or they're skipping the kids and going to the grandkids to help them get into property. So I guess you can also think outside the box. If you're in retirement and you've got a massive asset that you just don't need, think about guarantor loans and how you can help grandchildren into property, because we're seeing a bit of that at the moment as well.
Nick, I got 2 questions for you if I can follow up from that. The first one's around equity in the home. So obviously going guarantor involves having equity in the home. Do you feel like people are using their equity as much as they could be? Or do you think there might be a lack of understanding about how their equity could help them continue to get ahead in life?
Definitely a lack of understanding. And I think if there is understanding, it's driven by kids that want to get into the market. I don't think older people would be there thinking, I can actually be a guarantor for my child or my grandchild, and I want to go to my child or grandchild and educate them on getting into the market and how I can help them. Because, it might be $100,000 deposit that's required. How many people have $100,000 laying around that they can give? But quite often, they might have a $2 million asset with no debt on it that they don't need access to that equity given their stage in life. So where I think they could be better is understanding how they can help the younger generation instead of waiting until inheritance comes. You can actually help a lot earlier.
Yep. And is there a bit of a lost opportunity as well? I mean, even taking away the guarantor side, but a family home, let's say, couple that aren't quite at retirement age yet, but their kids have moved out. There's considerable amount of equity in the home. Maybe they don't want to buy an investment property and have to deal with land tax and all the other things that come with it. But is there also an opportunity to get that equity into, let's say, the stock market or into super it's in some way, shape or form?
That's another kettle of fish because, to do that, you're really looking at leveraging and borrowing, and then you have to factor in other things like borrowing costs. So you're exposing yourself to market returns. So first thing is you need to make sure that market returns are going to outweigh your borrowing cost, plus the tax you're going to pay on any returns. So I think that's a more difficult one to push to people because there is a little bit of risk associated. I guess where I'm coming from is, at some stage you are going to liquidate that house, and at some stage you are going to take that money and you're going to put it into investment of some sort. I know that because we see it every day in our office. So start to treat that house more as an investment and understand how it's going to actually play a role in your retirement.
Yeah, and you do see a lot that family wealth cycle in regards to the parents don't really want to generate an income because it affects other other retirement plans as well. So they're happy to utilize the equity in order to let the kids start to build wealth on their own properties as well. So you see that a lot in this day and age, helping kids get in. It's a great strategy. Parents feel good about it. Kids feel great about it. They're in, and as a family, that wealth starts to grow in property. So very commonly used now.
Yeah, love it. The other one I had, Nick, was curious to learn about downsizer contributions.
Yep. So I think Macy might have touched on this, and we're probably due to get him back on. But yeah, it's one of the only, not one of the only. There are numerous, but you've got a limited amount of opportunities to get money into super, and the government has been pretty good in providing those opportunities. But the downsizer contribution is one. $300,000 per individual. So if you've got a couple that sell a house, they can actually take $600K of that equity or those liquid funds and put that into super. And that is a strategy that we see day in, day out in our office. Obviously, you take that $600K, particularly if you're in pension phase and it's coming time to retirement, you can put that money into super, and that money can start earning you returns in super and providing you an income with no tax consequences. So yeah, it's one of the probably most used strategies in our office when it comes to retirement. And again, I just go back to the fact that people don't want a family home at some stage. There's complications with the size of the house, or they just want to purely live in another location.
It's good that you mentioned that too. And for those listening, if you didn't catch the Luke Mace episode, it's scroll back and find episode 175. It's financial planning for your future. So I did remember listening. I knew that's why it sounded familiar. It was an absolute banger. And yeah, it'd be great to have Macy back on to keep unpacking how, the numbers game audience can make the best of their financial future by implementing some smart things along the way.
For sure.
That aside, apart from catching up on the Luke Mace episode of the Numbers Game, you could also definitely book yourself in a catch up with the Innovate crew. Obviously, personally, my wife and I use Nick and the crew at Innovate, and I definitely can't speak highly enough of everyone at the Innovate crew. So inovayt.com.au is generally the best way to go and find out some information. And there's all these beautiful signups to be able to book yourself in a free consult with the team. If you are a future advisory client, you can definitely contact myself or any of the client managers directly, and we'd love to have a chat to you about how Nick and the crew can get around you and support you moving forward if you haven't already been introduced. But yeah, I mean, our teams work pretty closely together, so I imagine most people would know about what you guys do. And is there anything in the moment, Nick or Marty, from the team, if they do want to reach out to Innovate, anything specific or special they need to do?
I think at the moment it's paramount for lending, just purely in regards to we're seeing 3-year fixed rates start to come down. There's some shift in longer term debt right? So again, great time to review. Great time if you're looking to acquire a business to ring in, and we can support you with that. And also think about anyone from the age of 35 and beyond. There's some outstanding strategies that you can put into play on the financial well-being and wealth creation side with our planning division. And a lot of it you just would not know until you sit with a financial planner and understand the pathway forward. And when you see that being built out to retirement and beyond, you start to realize the relevance of that importance. So I can't stipulate more that the earlier you get the advice, it's all awareness. The more you know, the more you can do. And with good professionals around you, obviously like Jace, Luke Mace, as we talked about before, and on the funding side, we've got a team of experts that's just ready to support people. So yeah, take it up. Why not?
The only thing I would add to that, I'm thinking about the current environment, but we're seeing a lot of landlords sell properties for cash flow reasons. And, in a lot of circumstances, that is the right move for them. But what I would encourage people to do is if you are selling because you're close to retirement, please get some advice either from a financial planner or someone like yourself, Jace, and just understand the implications of selling, making sure you're doing the right thing with the excess funds. You can save yourself a lot of capital gains through things like super contributions. And then, how do you get that money into super if it's for your retirement? Because that is the best place for it from a tax point of view. So I think, just based on what's happening at the moment and a lot of landlords selling, and the reality is they've made a lot of money because they've bought quite some time ago in a booming market. But it's imperative that you understand what to watch out for if you are selling and you're going to experience a capital gain. So pick the phone up. If it's not to us, even someone like yourself.
Nah, beautiful, mate. Well, everyone, thank you for listening to another episode of The Numbers Game. It's been great to have you join us. Just a bit of a special shout out here as well. If you know there's a mum or dad, auntie and uncle, someone in your network who maybe is not listening to The Numbers Game right now, who may be pushing towards retirement age, even though we've said you can start as early as possible, you get the upside by starting earlier. If you do think of someone who probably needs a hand in this area, feel free to shoot them our way. Get them to listen to this episode and just make an introduction where we are the guys that are more than happy to help. That's what we're here for. So until next time, thank you for listening. Like, subscribe, jump onto YouTube and see our faces. But we have until next time.
It's your money. Make sure it counts. Game over.
This podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. The conversations are of a general nature and do not qualify as financial or tax advice. We recommend before you make any financial decisions, you consult a licensed professional. Individuals on the podcast may hold positions in the companies discussed.